Hey everyone, and welcome to Cozying Up with the Clear Cut, where we get up close and personal with women that inspire us. Today, we're with Deputy Editor from NYLON magazine and journalist Irina Grechko. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I gotta say, I'm a little nervous. I'm used to being on the other side and asking all the questions. So.
Well, I'm a little nervous being on this side interviewing you, so we can be nervous together.
Great.
We'll figure it out. And you're also recently engaged clear-cut couple. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love my ring so much.
Her ring is so gorgeous.
I love it.
It's a round brilliant, but with a octagon halo on it. So it's like a cool geometric like twist to it. I'm obsessed with it.
Thank you so much. Again, it's the perfect ring. I love it.
We'll talk more about the proposal and all of that in a little bit, but we really want to get to know a little bit about walk us through like your whole story. Like tell us, how did you become a journalist? How did you find yourself, at NYLON, all the other amazing publications you worked for, and what are your favorite types of like stories to write?
Yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. My mom makes a joke and says all the little girls were like, I want to be a ballerina. I want to be a princess. And I was like, I want to be a writer.
And why do you think that you always wanted to be a writer?
I think I always really, really loved reading books. And so I think that just naturally was something I was interested in and then wanted to write books as a child. But then as I went into middle school and high school, I pretty much knew always that I want to be a journalist.
So even when you were younger, were you more drawn to like news, like nonfiction, or were you like a storyteller writer when you were little?
I think I was always drawn to kind of entertainment and fashion and beauty, just the lifestyle magazines that we used to read as girls. Yeah, it's kind of that dream. And so yeah, I went to school for journalism at Emerson College in Boston.
And they have a great journalism school.
They do. And it's a great school. And it was a really, really interesting time when I decided to go to college because it was 2007. So it was BuzzFeed just came out, Huffington Post, Refinery 29. So there was a whole new online media that was forming. And
how did you choose Emerson? Because I know you grew up like all over the world, right?
I did. Yeah. I grew up in Russia, in Spain, in Dubai.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that was something where I've always grown up traveling and something that when it was time to decide where to go to college, I wanted to go somewhere that was completely different from what I was used to.
Yeah.
So I ended up in Boston.
Amazing. And while you were there, did you kind of, with all these like new types of digital media outlets coming out, like how did you kind of navigate and find what you wanted to do in the space?
So it was interesting when, even though all these publications had just come out when I was in college, it was still, when you were talking about journalism, especially lifestyle journalism that I do, it was always print magazines.
Yeah.
So I started interning at local magazines and did that, and then after I graduated, came to New York. And after I graduated, I thought I want to be a fashion journalist. And so,
in a print magazine.
Yeah, in a print magazine. And I ended up in the fashion closet of a magazine. Quickly realized that there was no writing to be done there. Yeah. And then a lot of the things are kind of doing fashion samples.
I was in the fashion closet as an intern at Teen Vogue, and it was basically like trafficking samples and like getting coffee and things like that. And I actually, when I was younger, always wanted to be like an editor at like a fashion magazine too. And like after that experience, realized that's not really like what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. I think we all watched Sex and the City when we were growing up, and we're like, oh, it's so fabulous to be a fashion editor.
It was like the Hills in the City or whatever at that time, and I was like, I'm gonna work at Teen Vogue, and that was like the ultimate dream. I remember.
Yeah, and then like you said, you end up bringing coffee and sorting samples, and then.
And people are like hysterically crying over like a missing shirt, and you're like, I'm not curing cancer here. Like, I'm clearly not passionate about whatever this is.
Yeah. So quickly realized that I probably wanted to do, not probably, that I definitely wanted to write more than credits, and landed my first just real job at People Style Watch,
Cool.
which was a print magazine. It no longer exists.
Really?
Yeah, it closed, which happens in print media nowadays.
It's happening all the time now.
Yeah.
I used to love People Style Watch.
Me too. Yeah. I thought it was a great magazine.
I would get it at the airport all the time and like read it at the gate and on the plane. Like that was like my favorite to like pick those things up.
No, it was such a fun magazine, but I landed there as a reporter, which was essentially a glorified name for a fact checker. But it was, at the time, I don't think I realized what a great foundation that is for a journalist, especially nowadays where we are in online publishing and everything goes up so fast.
Yeah.
There are no really fact checkers or researchers, so it was a great foundation for everything that I would go on to do in journalism, and just learning how to fact check everything, making sure that a story is 100% accurate, doing the research.
Do people fact check now before they throw things up online, or not really?
I mean, it depends from place to place, but I would say most news stories, unless they're super heavy on research, usually it's an editor that just kind of looks over the work of the writer and makes sure that it looks good. But I will say now, if back in the day, or not even back in the day, in print publishing, if you make a mistake, you're kind of, it's bad.
Yeah, because it's out there. You can't like edit it. You can't like go back in real time.
Yeah, so you have to print a correction in the next issue. And yeah, online, if there's a mistake, usually you can fix it, and you just write an editor's note that whatever mistake was being made. And
Yeah.
But I will say that was very helpful, having that kind of background. And I tell everyone students who approach me and ask me what's the best tip I can give them, I always say, try to go to a research department to do fact checking or copy editing.
Which doesn't sound fun.
No.
Yeah, or glamorous, but I know it's definitely like something that you need to know if you're like gonna progress in your career, right?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, like I said, it was not the most fun job, but it provided me the foundation that I needed.
That's how, like, when people come to me and like ask me, oh, how can I do what you do? I always say, well, you first have to start, working in like either a retail store or like somewhere in the industry and like learn those basic skills before you can like become a private jeweler. But no one wants to hear that. Everyone wants to just like skyrocket and like go directly to doing the fun stuff.
Which I'm sure, too, they don't think about. But even working with a customer, there's an art to it, especially given how delicate some of the subjects that you deal with come up, like budgets and price points and things like that.
Yeah, totally. So after People Style Watch, where'd you go next?
So I had a few swerves and curves, but next I was in DC for a year and a half, and I started working there for a local magazine called The Washingtonian. I originally applied to run their fashion website, did not get that job, but the editor-in-chief and the fashion editor who interviewed me really, really liked me, and they asked me if I would come on and work as assistant fashion editor, but then also help them with their weddings magazine.
Cool.
And it was Washingtonian weddings, so that was my first entry point into bridal.
And I know you've done like a lot in bridal, right?
Yeah, I did a lot in bridal. There was kind of my first job, and it involved a lot of styling work, working on bridal photo shoots, and just really doing bridal content, talking to brides about real weddings. But it was a very fun job. You're just surrounded by wedding dresses and wedding rings, which I know you're surrounded by all day.
When you were younger and kind of growing up, did you ever like envision, like, were you one of those people that always like planned their perfect wedding, or like obsessed over like the dress that you were gonna have or anything like that?
No, so it's funny. When they offered me the job, one of the first things I said, I was like, I don't really know much about the bridal world. I mean, I was 23 at that point. Like, I didn't know nothing about weddings. And they were like, well, it's fine as long as you know about fashion and beauty and just general lifestyle content. It's not that different.
Yeah.
You're tackling the same type of topics, which ended up being true. And I was there for probably a year and a half and had a really, really great experience. Decided that I missed New York too much.
Yeah.
Came back. And then the next two jobs that came along were in the bridal world. So I freelanced for Brides magazine.
Nice.
And then I went to the NYLON and was there for another year and a half. So I did bridal in total for 3 years.
Oh, wow. So you're like an expert in bridal, and now you're a bride.
Yeah, I guess.
So how has that like influenced you, like now that you're like finally in that space? Like, are you like overwhelmed by it, or you're like, I'm an expert, I know exactly what to do with like invitations and this and that?
So I think having worked for 3 years in bridal, I feel like I lived through hundreds of different weddings.
Yes.
So I don't necessarily know if that's what I want for myself. Even picking an engagement ring, I was like, I don't know what I want. I've seen so many beautiful things. How you pick?
Yeah, that's kind of how I am too. Everyone's like, what's your favorite cut? How did you pick your ring? It was like, well, I saw my ring when I was 8 years old, so like I kind of just made that decision. And I'm glad that it was kind of taken out of my control a little bit, because I love almost everything I make. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't have a favorite shape. It kind of just depends on like my day and my mood, you know?
Now, I feel like you are so lucky that that happened because it almost defines you, where they say you're an expert in engagement rings. So what did you pick for yourself?
And if you don't have like $1 million budget, it's like, I don't know, you know? So what were your favorite topics to write about, like when you were in bridal, or was that something that you were passionate about at the time?
When I started, like I said, didn't know much. And I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's hard not to like the bridal world. Everyone is nice. Everyone is so happy.
And excited, yeah.
So it's definitely was a very nice industry to work in. But after 3 years, I think I got a little tired and just writing.
It can be a little bit repetitive, right? Like,
yeah. It can be, I think, a lot repetitive.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's new trends that come out and things like that. But it's
were you writing a lot about like bridal fashion, or like etiquette in weddings, or like what types of pieces were you mostly doing?
So it was a mix. Since I did have 3 different jobs, it was, when my first job, a lot of it was fashion and
brides.
No, at Washington
okay.
weddings. It was a lot of different, just fashion, beauty, photo shoots. It was real weddings. When I went over to brides, I was in their wedding style section, so it was a lot of registry and invitations and things like that.
Oh, so you know like all the rules.
A little bit. I mean, I wasn't there. I was a freelancer there, so I wasn't there for too long, but I've definitely learned a lot in that department, where I just things I never knew about.
Yeah.
And then at the Knot, I did more of the news planning, things like that.
Yeah. Which is so crazy, because like I deal with like the ring, so obviously I'm an expert in that like one thing, but when I came to planning my wedding, I realized, now that I'm more in the space, that I made so many like faux pas. And
like what?
So I didn't send like real invitations. I sent a paperless post email, which I guess like if you're like, I mean, I was just watching like, I don't know, some reality show, and like it was like Southern Charm or something like that, and I was like, oh my god, like I made like the cardinal sin of like not sending like the perfect like wedding invitations and this and that, and like I did a lot of my own like favors, and it's like, oh, like you didn't have like the proper like paperware to like set the tone for like your special day. I was like, I don't know, like looked good. Like,
it's so funny because there are so many rules, but at the end of the day, did it ruin anything in your wedding?
No. And I think like kind of sometimes following all those rules can be just like so draining and like overwhelming, especially planning a wedding is just so stressful with everyone involved telling you like what you can and cannot do, that sometimes it's fun to be like a little rebellious and be like, whatever. Like we only told people we were getting married like 6 months before the wedding, which I guess is a huge faux pas too.
Yes, it was destination wedding rules.
Yes.
Extra layers.
Yeah. Yes, there's so many extra layers, and we were like, yeah, like whatever, like just show up, it'll be fine. And we just had like a website, and I don't know, no like formal like ness around it, which that's what I wanted. But I guess when reading Brides and the Knot and all of that, I was like, oh my god, this is not the correct way of doing things.
Okay, you saved paper on the wedding invitations.
Exactly. I was like, this is eco-friendly, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't check my mail.
I know. I don't even have the key to our mailbox. It's bad. Like Kevin is responsible for bringing all our mail.
No, I get like anxiety because sometimes I won't check the mailbox for like a month, and I'm like, I don't even want to open it, and like, no, it's in there at this point.
Yeah.
Awesome. So after your like stint in writing about Bridal, now your current, did you go straight to NYLON after that?
Yeah, so I think after 3 years, I got to a point where I was like, I don't really want to write about Bridal anymore.
Forever, yeah.
And so then I got my job at NYLON, and I've been there for the past 4 years and kind of covering a whole range of topics from fashion to beauty, entertainment, kind of everything, which was very nice to have to go from a niche kind of subject to now.
And now, like, you can write about, I mean, you wrote an amazing article on the clear cut. Oh my God, it was so good. We have to link to it because it was like one of the best articles I've ever written about us. But so now you can kind of just pick up anything that you want to write about.
Essentially, as long as it's kind of on brand and feels right and there's something interesting and unique about it, yeah, I kind of write about whatever I want, but also I edit. So a lot of the articles that go up, I am the one who's editing them or commissioning them if it's with a freelance writer. Yeah, so, but it's fun. It's a fun job.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that do you do mostly digital or print as well?
So it's all digital.
Oh, okay.
Our print magazine closed down as well.
We were in Japan like last week and I saw a print NYLON Japan.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They do have franchises, and so that's one of them.
And I was like, whoa, I didn't know this was like a thing.
No, it is interesting seeing those other magazines, and I love whenever I get a chance to get in a copy, I will look through them and see what they're doing.
So now that you have like, you're not kind of pigeonholed into a specific niche, like what are the types of stories that, you know, most interest you or that you are like most excited to write about?
So I will say I definitely went back to my fashion roots, and I write a lot about fashion, and I think that's something I'm very, very interested in, whether it's profiles on different companies and brands or whether it's just kind of pieces asking what the future of fashion is. But I also love writing about beauty and wellness and just lifestyle
in general.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's been interesting because I was for a very long time in print magazines and did components of it that were online, and then 4 years ago I decided that I wanted to make switch to be online.
So yeah, I would love to get your insight too in that switch with like all of these big magazines kind of closing down their print. Even like Teen Vogue is only online now. Like a lot of magazines have switched to completely digital because no one's buying print anymore, right? So do you have any insight on that? Like what are your like thoughts for like the future of, you know, media?
I mean, I think no one can really answer what the future is, and it's definitely people, most of them are getting their news online, they're getting their content online, but I'm not in the camp that thinks print is going to die entirely. I think people will always want to pick up a copy of Vogue and read a profile in there. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out how one supports the other, or especially for magazines that have print component to them, they should also be thinking about online and how that supports the packages that they do and stories that they run.
Yeah, because some publications like have their print, but then they have like way more articles that you can find just online, right?
Yeah, and it makes sense because print, there's only so many words you can fit on a page as opposed to online that you can really kind of create a beautiful, robust article that talks about all the different aspects that just simply don't fit on paper.
Yeah, and then you have a little bit more freedom, right, in terms of being able to write about more things than, I'm not sure, but in print you probably have to get approval to like take up the real estate on how many pages there are, right?
Definitely. And in print especially, you typically work, it ranges from magazine to magazine, but places that I have worked, usually it's 3 months ahead of the publishing date. So in those 3 months leading up, anything could happen and anything news can drop. So it's just also a matter if for some reason you can't in time print something for the print issue, that there's an online aspect to it where you can still write about it. And
because now it's like you need the news like the second things happen and everyone wants to know like every detail, which also I think makes it difficult to like have all the facts in line, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is so quick and immediate. And I mean, I don't know from your side, when you work with the media, what kind of timelines you personally work with when they ask you for
Well,
asset.
I know a lot of times we'll work with media outlets, and if someone gets engaged, like they need to know like that second, like what I think, like the shape, how much is it, all this. And it's sometimes I get like a blurry photo and I'm like, I don't is when Emma Stone got engaged, I was like, is that even a diamond? Like I have no idea. And it was a pearl.
I did not know that. That's cool.
It was like this really cute like pearl in this antique setting. I was like, it looks like an antique setting, but I don't know what kind of diamond that is because it was like kind of blurry. So sometimes I'm like, I don't want to like give I don't want to say something that I can't like back up myself, or like, how much do you think this is? And it's like, sometimes I feel bad if it's not like a $1 million ring and I'm like, oh, it looks like it's like $10,000, you know? But that's like not what people want to hear sometimes too, you know?
Yeah.
But I think for those types of things, they need it like the second like news is announced, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's funny because when I went to college, when I went to NYU, in order to be a journalism major, they made you double major in something else because they said like journalism was dying.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that it's not true. There's less jobs out there. The mastheads are shrinking. It's definitely a very competitive industry and it's hard to get into. And it was even hard when I was starting out. But yeah, that's interesting that they make you double major.
Yeah, because they were like, oh, like journalism as we know it, like doesn't exist anymore. Now, I guess like anyone, even like me, can be like a blogger or like say whatever I want and like just publish it online and people can take it as fact sometimes. So I think it's important that there are like outlets out there that are still like fact checking, and like obviously those important like newspapers like the New York Times and all of that. It's important to have like real journalism out there still.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, now thinking back to it, when I entered college too, I was entering as a print journalism major, but then they made a switch and it became print and multimedia, which obviously makes sense
Yeah.
again with the online boom. But yeah.
Awesome. So in every episode, we ask all of our guests, like, what is your spark? So that means, like, what is that thing inside you that, like, motivates you to, like, continue to do your job every single day and, like, kind of, like, drives your passion?
I will say definitely telling people stories. I think that's my favorite part of my job and thing that makes me love my job. I meet so many new people all the time that have either incredible businesses or incredible stories.
Oh, that's how we met.
That is how we met. Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting too in your case, where I remember someone told me about the Clear Cut and they're like, I think it's a really interesting company. I think you should check it out. And I was like, okay. And I added you on Instagram and I was like, I'll just see kind of what they do and just watch out for them. And then I started watching all your videos, whether it was the questions, the Q&As.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I'm not even the customer, but I want to see this content because it just teaches me something new and it's interesting to watch. And then I just cold emailed you and asked if I could profile.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. So just meeting people and like, you know, telling people stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people have such interesting stories and reasons for why they're launching their brands, especially nowadays when it's direct to consumer and just fashion is changing in general.
Yeah.
So I think storytelling is the thing that is kind of my spark.
Awesome. I just have a random question. What do you think are like the coolest, like newest things that you've seen like in the fashion or like direct to consumer world that you've covered or been exploring recently?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I feel like there's so much always going on. But I think right now, the thing that I'm most interested is the future of fashion in terms of sustainability.
Yeah.
And what new brands are doing things that are sustainable and how they're approaching that. And I mean, it's hard to be a new brand that's sustainable just because you're still inherently producing more things. But it is just all the businesses that are either upcycling or using recycled materials, that they come and just like doing new things with them.
Because clothing contributes to so much of the pollution in like the world, right? They end up in landfills, like most of the clothing items. So I know there are tons of, I was watching like something, I think on BBC when we were in Japan, about all these new like companies that are, either figuring out ways of like streamlining manufacturing better or like using like recycled materials. And I think that's like I think that's super cool too.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's just like there's no way and I think I can be wrong on this, but I think fashion is the second or third most polluting industry, which is crazy. And it's something we consume on a daily basis. So I think even for me heading into this year, one of the things I'm trying to think about is how can I buy more secondhand clothes and just like trying to make most use of my closet. So
I'm like a huge proponent of the Rent the Runway Unlimited, and I haven't really bought that much stuff because I've been just like renting my clothes now. I don't know if that's sustainable, but I think it's a little bit better, right?
No, I think it's definitely better as long as you're not buying new clothes out there and rewearing things. Yeah.
Because I used to buy like fast fashion. I'd buy like one thing and wear it like maybe 1 or 2 times and then just like throw it away. And it's like that's just, I feel like that was a few years ago, and now like we're heading in a totally new direction in like fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I would need an outfit and I would go to an H&M or a Zara and buy a whole outfit.
Yeah.
And now it just like hangs on my closet, and some of the quality, I'm like, I don't really want to wear this again. But then you feel bad because you're
totally.
like,
and then I live in this tiny apartment and I'm like, I can't accumulate like so much stuff that I'm like never going to wear again.
Oh, I know. I have so many shoes too. That is my vice. I love shoes and I have so many and they're just everywhere.
Oh my God. Well, I wanted to gift you a spark ring.
Aw,
so this is a ring that we give all of our guests, and it's just like a daily reminder of, to keep hustling and keep, fueling your passions. And if it doesn't fit you, we can size you and send you a proper size.
I love it so much. I watched other episodes and I was like, I really hope I get one too.
Oh, yeah, of
course. Love it.
And we ask all of our guests to, and if you want a pinky, we'll just give you a smaller size. Yeah.
There we go.
Yay. Oh my God, so cute.
I love it.
And we always ask all of our guests to bring a special piece of jewelry, because we think jewelry can be, so much more than just like a luxury item, but there's a lot of sentimental value in a lot of pieces. So tell us what you brought.
I actually have 2 pieces.
Okay.
But my first one is something that I received from an old mentor. I'm getting tangled, but it's this arrow necklace.
Oh, cute.
And it's this arrow necklace, and my mentor, when I was leaving, gave it to me as a reminder to always keep pushing forward and to zooming right through to whatever goals I have and just ignoring anything else that's around me. So I think that
is such a sweet sentiment.
It is so, so, so sweet. And it's just like a simple necklace.
Yeah.
With that reminder. And it's also, I've been so fortunate in this industry that I've had mentors.
That's good.
That have taught me and just have really been the biggest cheerleaders in my life. And I think that is so, so, so important in my industry, where everyone kind of knows each other, but also just in general, that we should all have people that are championing us and that we are.
It's awesome. A game changer. It's like essential to have like the support system. And I think, I don't know the industry, but I feel like it can be kind of competitive and cutthroat, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, there's so few jobs nowadays in journalism that it is so, so, so competitive. But then it's also, the industry is also pretty small and everyone knows each other. And I always, again, another thing that students always ask me, they're like, well, like, how do you network? How do you meet people? But also say every person that you meet, you just have to be nice to everyone. Yes. You never know. You might have an assistant, you might have an intern, and then one day they're going to work for your dream job, and it's just like, all of us have to be nice to people and just treat them with respect. And yeah, all of us, if you can, help and do what you can for other people.
I think that's awesome. And that's like true in every industry. Totally. What's your second piece?
So my second piece is obviously my engagement ring. And it's so funny because prior to this, I've never really worn rings. And one of the things I was nervous about, I'm like, is it something I can wear every single day?
Yeah.
So it's been nice to see how obsessed I am with it and how it just like fits with everything.
You get used to it.
You get used to it so fast. Now I feel naked without it.
Yeah, and it's like, wait, if I like leave it at home or I left it like on our trip, and I would always be checking my fingers like, oh my God, like where is it? Like as if I like lost it or something.
But like I too mentioned earlier, when I did not know at all what engagement ring I wanted, I knew that I didn't want anything classic, but I also knew I didn't want anything that I wouldn't love in 10 years. So I think it was, I just love how it has a unique setting and it still is a classic diamond.
Yay! And tell us about how he proposed. I want to hear the story from you.
It was so sweet. So Kevin always known that I wanted to go to Gramercy Park, which is the private gated community, and you can't
get in without a key.
Yeah, you can't get in without a key. So, and we've walked around it a bunch of times and things like that. So then one day he suggested we go get brunch. And he told me it was a surprise brunch. And Kevin does things like that. He
does. So you weren't like thrown off. Because if
No.
Kyle said there was a surprise brunch, I'd be very suspicious.
No. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah. And then we're going to go hang out with it. He has a little nephew. So we're going to hang out with him. And I was like, great. We go to the Gramercy Park Hotel where the brunch is. Again, I'm like, oh, okay, this is normal. And then as we're wrapping up brunch, I'm like, why don't we walk around Gramercy Park and see if someone will let us in?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he was like, that's a great idea.
He was probably like, yes.
Yeah, he probably was like so relieved. He's like, I don't have to do anything now.
I don't have to suggest doing it.
Yeah, so sure enough, as we approach Gramercy Park, there's someone standing there who was like, oh, you should come in. So we do.
Were you like suspicious by that or?
No, because I thought I set it into motion. I'm the one who suggested, look at me. Now there is someone.
But he had planned for that person to be there.
Yes, he did. And then he proposed inside the park.
Were you surprised?
I was so surprised.
Really?
Yeah, I was. Even like walking into the park, I just thought it was luck. I'm like, things like that happen in New York all the time. And so, no, I was so surprised. I fell down to both of my knees, too, when he went down to one. Yeah.
My God.
It was so sweet.
That's so sweet. And then did you hang out with his cousin after? Or?
No, his nephew, no. Yeah. But that was the first question I asked. I'm like, oh, so do we now go hang out with your nephew? And he's like, no, this was all a ruse.
Now we celebrate.
Yeah. And we stayed at the hotel, which was
oh my God, that's
really
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, a little like staycation. That is so cute. I love that story.
Oh, it was a very, very special day.
Oh my God. And I love that you were like so surprised.
Yeah, I was shocked. And everyone says they're like, how? He suggested a surprise brunch, the walk through the park. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. And sometimes you're just like kind of not thinking about it all the time. So it's just like going with the flow. Do you like remember what he said when he got down on one knee? Because I blacked out completely.
No. I can't remember anything.
That's what everyone says. They're always like, I have no idea.
Yeah, and he was like, you fell down on the ground. And I was like, no, I didn't. And he's like, yeah, you definitely did.
Oh my God, that is so awesome. And we like to look at sparkly things. And I know your ring is a geometric kind of shape and you like kind of funkier geometric pieces, right?
Love, yes.
So I brought some kind of like out there stuff to look at.
Love it.
And your ring has a beautiful round brilliant diamond, but it's set in an octagon halo on a super thin pave band. So it has this like cool modern geometric feel to something that's a classic look.
No, I definitely like that kind of modern
the twist.
Yeah, the twist on a classic.
Yeah, and that's like my favorite thing to do too. So we have some cool, funky, geometric, a little bit more out there things to just kind of take a look at and play with. So this is a new trend actually in engagement rings, has been like weird funky shapes like this triangle diamond. Usually these were always just side stones to center stones, but now people are doing them as like their actual center stone. So this is like a 2-carat trillion with this kind of like a weird funky industrial like open look.
I love that. Gotta say, I'm obsessed with the double bands.
Really?
When there's a ring inside the double bands, I think it looks so, so, so beautiful.
And I feel like this is kind of more of like a middle finger or like pointer finger ring or something. It's kind of like heavier, a little bit, has a masculine like vibe to it.
No, it's so, I feel like high fashion and modern.
Yeah. We just made a really pretty trillion ring for a client, and it was kind of similar, but it didn't have this top part. It just had a really thin band, but it was offset, and it was like super cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
And then I have a cool twist on like fancy drop earrings that you would like see on the red carpet, but these have kite shaped diamonds.
Wow.
So they're kind of these like triangles with step cuts. So it looks like an emerald cut faceting, but then it goes into like this weird triangle. So they're 3 diamonds, and they kind of go from smallest to largest, which are kind of cool.
This is beautiful. That shape is so unique.
Yeah, it's super cool. You like barely ever see this type of shape. Hopefully we'll make more rings with that shape. But it's also something that was never really used for like center stones or anything like that, more for like a drop earring or like a side stone.
So what do you think are some of the trends that are going to be popular this coming year?
So this year, oh, you're turning it on me.
See what I did there?
I think things that I'm seeing that are picking up are, so a lot of people have been doing really, really thin bands for their engagement rings, but now we're seeing more people wanting to get a thicker wedding band to pair with it. So like almost like men's band width to wear with their thin ring. So kind of like either like with some texture, like a hammered look or like a brushed finish, or even some like little diamonds in it. So we've been seeing more of like funky pairings with like maybe more classic rings and then like a funkier wedding band. So I think that's going to be a trend that continues. And you see that with what's her name? Emily Ratajkowski. She has like the trois moi, which was huge last year, and I think it's going to continue on for this year, but she pairs it with a thick hammered wedding band.
It's interesting. I've been actually seeing a lot of people, instead of engagement rings, having wedding bands with diamonds in them.
Yes.
Which has been cool.
A lot of people have been doing eternity bands as engagement rings. Is that the radiator?
Say that again.
A lot of people have been doing eternity bands as their engagement rings and then like stacking it with like a plain band. So that's been cool. I think 3-stone rings are going to pick up more popularity this year. With like maybe funkier side stone shapes that we haven't seen before, and 2-tone 3-stone rings.
2-tone 3-stone ring.
So 3-stone rings, but with like gold bands.
I like that. I do really like, especially rose gold and just this feminine cuts, like ovals. I think looks so
elegant. Yeah. So those are things I think are going to be kind of newer trends, but we'll see as the year goes on.
Oh.
Cool. So yeah, that's about it. Well, I'm so excited that you were able to come by today. This was so much fun, and I tell everyone where people can follow you, read your articles, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on my Instagram. Irina Grechko is my handle, but also follow NYLON for all the articles that I write.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Yay. And if you guys want to see all the beautiful jewelry we were looking at, head to our YouTube at The Clear Cut, and of course follow us at The Clear Cut. Thanks, guys. See you next time.